Hi there, Cosmic Family. My name is Jess Leal in this incarnation. So today I am going to talk about Cristobal Colon. It is called in English Cristopher Colombus, but I am going to use the Spanish names today. So it's important to say that the story we all know is that Cristobal Colon was a man that discovered an entire continent in 1492, and his campaign was sustained by two Spanish monarchs and the church. So this is the story that schools told us and that we most of us believed once, but we have to ask questions to question ourselves. And how was an expert sailor going to discover a continent out of nowhere is the first question. And how two Spanish monarchs were going to sustain a campaign to a man who promised to discover a continent out of nothing. This sounds ridiculous right now. So I'm going to explain other story, which is not that the one that is in the books. And this small investigation I did, it is based on a journalist, a reporter called, an Italian reporter called Ruggero Marino. You can look for him on Instagram, and he wrote a book that is called Cristobal Colon, The Last Templar. And I will explain in a very simple way why the story that the books and that society told us couldn't be real, and this thing they told us doesn't fit actually, because why two powerful monarchs would believed to a man that was a sailor, that at that time sailors weren't literate, they weren't educated, but we're going to see that was not the case of Cristobal Colon. So I want to situate us in context, so I will explain a little things first. These two monarchs, Fernando de Aragón and Isabel de Castilla, I will show you images while I'm talking, were married in a clandestine wedding, because church didn't support their marriage because they were distant cousin and nephew. Isabel was disputing the throne with Juana, who was the daughter of her half-brother, Enrique IV. Who was the king at that time. The king Enrique promised to Isabel that she was going to be her successor. In return, he would pick the husband for her. But of course, she didn't comply with that. And she married Fernando anyways. They had to falsificate documentation in order to going on with their marriage, because at the time they need what it is called a bull, papal bull, which is documentation from the church that they were supporting their marriage. They falsificate these documents, and they present a paper from a dead pope. Obviously, church did realize about this, so they were excommunicated for many years. In 1451, there was a pope that tried to help them, of course, in exchange of lands and possessions. But this wasn't the solution until the Civil War. So I'm telling all these things just to get in context. It is supposed in the story, and I mean supposed because I am going to explain what I really believe and what Ruggiero Marino says about this. But it is supposed that the Pope Alejandro VI, and I am showing a figurative image about him, sustained the campaign to the New World. I have to be clear about this man because this man had many enemies because he wasn't Italian. In fact, his real name was Rodrigo Borja, which is an Spanish name, and he turned his name to Rodrigo Borgia just to sound more Italian. And other thing that it's important to say is that it was a very polemic pope because he perpetuated many distorted practices that many popes did before. This wasn't something new, and he was a confessed pedophile. But what people didn't like about him is that he didn't hide those acts. It's not about what he did, it was about he was not hiding that. These two monarchs, Fernando and Isabel, and Alejandro VI, the Pope at that moment, they supposedly sustained this campaign to the New World, but actually it wasn't like that, because there was another Pope who was called Giovanni Battista Cibo, and he was Inocencio VIII, and he remained at his position from, according to the St. Peter's Cathedral, from 1484 until the 25th of July of 1492. So he, of course, he knew Cristobal Colón because he were contemporary. I mean, while he was at that position, he must met him. And what is really strange is that this Pope actually died 7 days before the trip of Cristobal Colón. Ruggiero Marino believed that he was killed. There's suspicious things about his death. And what Ruggiero Marino tells too is that this Pope had in his blood, a blood of a Hebrew father and a Muslim mother. So he was certainly a man who had in his blood like the three types of religions that at that time were in disturb, because we have to remember that at that time Muslims were occupying Holy Land, and these two monarchs, Fernando and Isabel, and the Pope, they were who gave the order to expel 800,000 of Jews, and many of them, they faked the conversion in order to stay, but many others were tortured and burned alive. So there were a lot of, like I said, many disturbs with Jewish and Muslims at that time. So there's another line that explains that Colón could be a Sephardic Jew, actually, and I will talk more about this later. But what the theory of Ruggiero, it is that this man, Inocencio VIII, the Pope that died 7 days before the trip of Cristobal Colón, was actually the father of Cristobal Colón. I mean, Cristobal could be his illegitimate son or grandson. And this theory started to grow because this man had a lot of illegitimate sons, and dollars maybe. He did recognize 2 of them, but he had like 10 more. This means that this in the reality, this Pope was actually the person who was sustaining his campaign, and there's other evidence about this, because there's this famous map that I'm showing you right now that was designed from a very known navigator at the time that was called Piri Reis, and the map was designed in 1513, and it's a very strange one. It's a very strange one because it had portions of America at that time that wasn't discovered yet. It has part of the Antarctic too. I am showing there in the images, and in the at the edges of the map, it is explained that this map was designed. The foundation of this map was from other map that he discovered from a trip that Cristobal Colon took in 1485. This was 7 years before that Colon would discover America. Inocencio Octavo, this Pope that I told you before, that Ruggiero Marino believes that it's the father of Cristobal Colon, was at his position at that time. So certainly it wasn't this year, the year that the story told us that America were discovered, wasn't real. First, because this expert sailor did 4 trips, and he did very perfectly good the winds and the way to get there. He went to the Antilles both times in 1485, and then he returned to the same place, and then did 4 trips. So this actually wasn't accidental. Cristobal Colon knew very well where he was going. And it is known that Vikings, Chinese, and Muslims got to America a lot before. And the other day I made a video talking about the story of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and at the final of the video I explained how Templars, there's many signs that they got here too. It is said that they came to Argentina, that they got to the south and to the center and the north of Argentina. And there's many evidence that, of course, it's hidden. Nobody talks about that because they want us to keep believing these ridiculous stories about how a man accidentally discovered an entire continent. So one thing I want to get clear too, it's that in his will, Cristobal Colon left 3 petitions, and one of them was that they wanted to leave the tithe for the poor, and this was a Jewish custom. Then he ordered to leave money to a Jewish that lived in Lisboa, and I will talk other thing about this after. And the rest of the money was, he said that he wanted to invert that in the Holy Land Cross. So these things are linked them with the Jewish. About this man, that it is supposed that Cristobal Colon left money, the Jewish man in Lisboa, it's important to know that the order of the temple, it was supposedly dissolved in 1314, but actually they didn't disappear. They changed their names, and they were calling themselves the Knights of Christ. So the order of the temple actually kept going. It didn't dissolve at that time, how the history told us, and they moved to Lisboa. So I think Cristobal Colon were connected with them, and it's important to say that in 1504 he wrote a book of prophecies, and this means that he got a lot of knowledge. At that time, it wasn't common that sailors were educated men. Again, so this meant that he had knowledge. And what is important to say too is that his brother Bartolomeo was in contact with the monarchs of England. So why these powerful monarchs would hear this man? This is something that we have to pay attention. And things that are important to say is that the church were hiding this. Of course, they always knew that this continent existed, but they hide it because Adam and Eve were born in Orient. So all the Europeans were the descendant, and to think about people living in other parts of the world was actually like an heresy. So they hide this as much as they could. But once many people started to found these maps and information that was circulating, they had to accelerate the process and tell that they were that the church were who sustained the campaign to discover the new world, that they participated of the discover. So of course they always were manipulating everybody like always did. And I told you that these systems were managed by psychopaths. So every system that is linked with power and money, where there's these people involved. And other thing that it's important that connects Cristobal Colon with Templars is that the ships had this big cross, this big Templar cross, and the name of the ships were the Niña, the Santa Maria, and the Pinta. Niña, it is like child, like a feminine child, and Santa Maria is Saint Mary. So I told you the other day in the video of Jesus and Mary Magdalene how Mary Magdalene traveled in a boat with his child. Maybe she was pregnant, or maybe she already gave birth, but it is very symbolic for me that he had two boats and two ships, that were called this way, Santa Maria and the Niña. It's like he was describing Mary Magdalene and her child. So one more thing that I want to show you is the signature of Cristobal Colon, because it was very, very mysterious, and I am showing right now the image. So that expo ferens, that means expo, it's like Christ, Cristo, and ferens, it's bearer. So he called himself the bearer of Christ. So I think he was connected to something else in order to do this trip. So the conclusions are that Ruggiero Marino says that this trip was sustained by this Pope, Inocencio VIII, in order to found in the Americas another church, not the Catholic one, not one that was from that was Jewish, and not a Muslim one, a church that unified everything. So I think Cristobal Colon had very good intentions when he came here. And other theories said that he actually brought in their in the ships a lot of exiled Jews, and they married with a lot of Native American women. So I think he didn't want to colonize this place, but of course all the men that came after him, they did. We all know this man, Hernan Cortés, who was tortured a lot of people from Latin America. So I mentioned him like a lot of others, but this was not the case of Cristobal Colón, and I think they really told us a lie. The story was unfaithful to the reality. Then came the real men that were working for the monarchs of Spain, but Cristobal Colón wasn't working for them. That's a lie too. So I think this changes everything. The story wasn't like they told us, and I think we don't have to believe everything that the schools tells us, because we now know that it's ridiculous. It is actually ridiculous that a man would discover an entire continent, and that a king gave him money just to believe in him that he could discover that. It has no sense. So this is the end. Thank you, everybody. I see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.